Murthy sir, can we start, sir?
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. For the second session of today, we are delighted to have with us Dr. S. Murthy sir, Associate Professor, Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering, NITG, for a session on embedded control for electric vehicle technology. We are happy to have you, sir. Sir has completed his postdoctoral fellowship from KTH Royal Institute of Technology, Sweden, in the area of reconfigurable architecture. He has completed his doctoral degree from Anna University, Chennai, in the field of VLSI design, and he has completed his master's degree from PSC College of Technology, Coimbatore, with the specialization of applied electronics, and bachelor degree from University of Madras in the Department of Electrical and Electronics Engineering. He has 18 plus years of teaching and research experience, and he has also has 2 awards in his name. The first one is postdoctoral fellowship under Erasmus Mundus External Cooperation Window from Royal Institute of Technology, Sweden, and he was also awarded the Young Research Fellowship Award under Mighty Government of India in Jan 2018. He has received around 1 crore for various research projects from agencies like National Institute of Wind Energy, MNRE, Government of India, Power Grid Corporation of India, SECUP, World Bank, for various research activities. He also has 5 patents for his credit, and his areas of interest includes VLSI for digital signal processing, embedded system, and digital controllers for power application. He also holds the professional membership in IEEE, ISTE, IET, IE, and ISET. He has published more than 70 papers in various national and international journals. At this juncture, on behalf of the management, principal, Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering, and the organizing team, I welcome our today's resource person, Dr. S. Murthy sir, for this session, and I kindly request him to take over the session.
Thank you, Professor Ravi, for the introduction. Good morning, all of you. I'm Dr. Murthy. As Professor Ravi introduced me, I'm in fact have a great pleasure to be part of this workshop to deliver the lecture on embedded controllers for electric vehicle technology. I thank the management and the administration of KPR Institute for giving me this opportunity. When we get into this embedded controllers for electric vehicle technology, as a content of this particular lecture, we'll be looking at how the embedded controllers are going to reside inside the electric vehicle and what are the different embedded controllers that are available and what is the significance of using certain embedded controllers. Okay, so this would be the flow of the lecture, and at the end you might be having a test. So kindly listen to the lecture clearly so that you can attend the test very well. Okay. I hope you could see the screen, PowerPoint presentation.
Yes, sir, it's available.
And if you have any doubts, you can raise it by sending it to the chat, or you can unmute your mic and ask the questions. Okay. Right. So, when we look into the electric vehicle, this was the electric car that was, say, produced during 1903, where they had a very different arrangement in it. Before this 1903 professionally or commercially developed electric car, it had a DC powered motor that was produced in 1830. And after that, they started with the electric vehicle building at Dutchtown in 1835. And an electric vehicle has not become a viable option until 1865 because of no rechargeable batteries that are available at that time. So they were using, they felt that this would be a waste of time and not a viable option for going through. And at 1865 and slowly in 1881, they found the improved version of the storage battery. And after that, they explored more on the electric vehicle. So I shown you this 1903 Traeger car, electric car. It is the front wheel drive electric gasoline hybrid car and has a power steering. And between 1890 and 1910, there were many hybrid electric cars and four-wheel drive electric cars were developed with an intention to have less pollution than petrol or LPG powered vehicles. And since there is no internal combustion engine, the oil changes or tune-ups or the exhausts which are not going to be there, made it more positive for electric vehicles. And the electric vehicles were looked at as a more energy efficient than gasoline vehicles. And they started having a good research over on electric vehicles. Coming to the major components in an electric vehicle, probably many would have analyzed this and they would have scanned through each and every part of the electric vehicle, like right from power converter, machine, or auxiliary power supplies, transmission units, etc. So I think one expert would have covered even autonomous vehicles, right? So we will be looking at the electronic controller, which is coming in as a control unit for the overall system. So the model of an electric vehicle controller will be something like this. So many sensors will be getting integrated and it will be connected to the controller, and the input which is received from any of the sensors will be taken into account and will try to work on the particular algorithm. So it is going to mainly control each and every part of the electric vehicle blocks and will be having a separate algorithm for or conditions for each and every control. You can see here a battery. So the state of charge of the battery, state of health of the battery need to be analyzed, and the acceleration based on the acceleration and the brake that are being applied. And similarly, gear shifting, if any gear shift is going to happen, that need to be taken into account. And the speed of the machine need to be analyzed at any point of time. All these conditions will be taken into account for the better control of the electric vehicle. And probably this is one more picture on vector control of PMSM. So here you could see the intention of showing this particular block diagram is how much complex, path transformation and ABC to BQ transformation need to be done, and after that the inverter will be controlled, and in addition to it, it need to control the PMSM. So this entire control blocks need to be implemented inside a controller. Okay. So that would be the intention of any controller designer. So EV driven by induction machine with vector control scheme is shown here. So here also you can see the complexity that is involved and how the controller need to implement all these blocks which are reflecting the calculation of rotor flux or torque or excitation or say all these need to be calculated within no time, and the pulses need to be generated to the inverter, thereby it will try to control the induction machine. So this is again a structure of a DSP based EV controller. You can see here the contents of the DSP, what is being available inside a DSP, and the different signals that are reaching the DSP is also shown here. So the current, voltage, temperature detection, speed and brake signal, speed detection, any protection circuit, and then we need to see what is the condition of the battery. All these need to be taken into the DSP, and based on that, it is going to give different signals to the different modules. This is shown. I hope it may not be even clear for many people, but this is shown just to say that these are certain operations that are done inside an EV controller. The algorithm that a specific algorithm that is required to get implemented in an EV controller is something like this, where it needs a good data acquisition. Say for instance, ADC, the analog to digital converter should be be able to handle more number of signals, thereby the number of control aspects also will get increased, and the parameters, the control parameters, even if it is going to be high, it need to be taken into account, and the DSP or any digital controller which is going to get deployed here should handle all those signals and process it, and the algorithm need to be run. And once the algorithm runs, the required pulses will be generated out of the controller, and it will be driving your MOSFET with due proper isolation in between. Okay. Right. So the interdisciplinary nature of any say hybrid electric vehicle would be something like this. It needs a proper energy storage, a proper vehicle design, then the vehicle dynamics will be taken care, and the power electronics and electrical machines that are involved in the system need to be taken care, and control and power management and regenerative braking, and the vehicle modeling also is required. I mean, the main requirement for any interdisciplinary nature of an hybrid electric vehicle. So I hope you would have seen many hybrid electric vehicles coming up these days, which will surely take care of all these aspects, and based on that only they will have this. And this is one example. Okay. So Toyota car, you can see here what is the type of engine they use in the hybrid electric vehicle, and same with the motor that is being used, and how it is going to be available inside as a block. This is all example which I am showing. And when you go with any hybrid electric vehicle or an EV system, the main unit will be there, electronic control unit, and few gateways and the chargers and power controller units will be available. You could see here the orange one is going to be your communication units, and so the communication units between the different modules, communication lines between the modules are taken care with the help of CAN and LIN and FlexRay. Even the other types of communication protocols will be used so that there will be an effective data transfer between the modules. So it needs a coprocessor, I/O expander, power conversion, etc. So if you see here an ECU, if I start implementing an ECU, the ECU might be implementing, getting interface with many of the sensors. In addition to it, whatever the process value that we take from the ECU, it will be taken to the drivers and it will try to give the instruction to the machines through the drivers. So the coprocessors will try to involve the input noise filtering, data coprocessing, and acceleration of the hardware also will be done by the coprocessor. And I/O expander will try to expand the input-output lines and try to produce the PWM pulses based on the requirement, and power conversion will have the motor control and the DC to DC and AC to DC converters. Okay. So these are certain modules which are getting involved and getting interface through the sensors and drivers with the electronic control unit. So coming to the embedded system, you can go through the slide, but the age-old definition for an embedded system is it is a combination of hardware and software which is developed for a particular application. So that holds true till now, and so it is going to have a specific hardware which is required for that particular application, and the software which is going to reside over it will try to control that particular hardware, and it will do the required operation for that particular application. So that is the concept of any embedded system, which is not a desktop computer or a laptop or anything else, because those are going to be very generic in nature, which can be used for any applications. But your embedded system, whichever you are developing, will have a very, very limited hardware and very limited software, which will be compatible for using it for the application whichever you have developed. In specific here, if we are developing any hardware or over it, if I'm going to develop the software, that will be made to work for a particular EV application. So there are three key embedded system technologies that are available, and they are going to affect the development of embedded systems. They are the technologies that are going to bring up many many advancements in the embedded systems. They are processor technology, design technology, and IC technology. Just a minute. So we'll be looking at the different technologies one by one in a very brief manner. So look at processor, IC, and design technologies one after another. So the design technology, we have two sets of designs, two modes of designs here. So we'll be having one end involves with the programming languages like C, C++, Java, or Python, and through the compilers, assemblers, it will be converted into the machine level instructions, and the hardware that we are going to use here is going to be a microprocessor or a microcontroller. As you know that these days they don't differentiate much on microprocessor and microcontroller. In age-old days, or in my college days, or in your college days, you would have written the difference between the microprocessor and the microcontroller for 2 marks, right? But it is holding true only for that. But people have gone beyond it, and they started calling controller as a processor and processor as a controller in many places. But the software or the tool that is going to control your target hardware is going to be same. Like starts with the programming languages like C, C++, Java, or Python. That is going to be the software which is going to be used for controlling the target hardware like microprocessor or a microcontroller. This is one way of designing any embedded system. The other side of it is going to be your hardware description languages. So the hardware description language is going to play a very important role in designing the logical circuits. So hardware, the name itself says that it is going to describe the hardware. So a language which is used to describe the hardware is going to be used here. And here the difference between the programming language and the hardware description language is going to be, say your programming language is going to offer a sequential execution of statements, but your hardware description language will have an option of concurrent execution and also sequential execution. So that there will be more, if you want to offer any parallelism, parallel processing, that is always possible with my hardware description language. And the target hardware which I am going to use here is going to be an field programmable gate array, that is FPGA, or a programmable logic device, that is PLD. Or if I want to convert this into an IC for a particular application, then I call that as an application specific integrated circuit, which is in short ASIC. So these are the target, especially the FPGA and PLDs are going to be the target hardware that is going to exist. So here the hardware description language is going to convert the programs into the realizable circuits, and those realizable circuits will be realized with the help of hardware like FPGA or PLDs, and it will try to implement or incorporate the parallel processing aspect, which is not possible with my microprocessors or a microcontroller on the other side of the design. So basically, it is something like between the hardware and software. Say the software is going to be your programming language, which is going to have the sequential execution of statements. So here the microprocessor and the microcontroller are also going to have the sequential mode of operation. So that might be the main difference between the target hardware for the programming languages and the target hardware for the hardware description languages. Okay. Right. The processor technology. Coming to the processor technology, we have 3 sets of processors available. One is called general purpose processor, then application specific processor, and single purpose processor. The name itself suggests that general purpose processor. So this is going to be a processor which can be deployed in any application, or even when I use it for a particular application, and if I want to remove and use it for some other application, I can make use of it. So here the user will have full access to the program memory and also the data memory. So the contents of program memory and data memory can be fully accessed by the user, and the changes, the modifications, whichever the user want to have, they can do it in both the programs and also in the data. But when we go with, say, the example for this general purpose processor is something like, say, the generic 8085 or 8051 or PIC or Arduino, Raspberry Pi, whichever you have gone through and used it, all these are going to come under the general purpose processors. And when we go with the second one, application specific processors, here the program memory, the access to the program memory by the user will be limited, and the data memory can be accessed by the user exclusively. So here the program memory limitation of access to the program memory can be inferred with an example. I know everyone will be having minimum one cell phone with you, and so you might have experienced this. Say when you might be having the ringtones which are inbuilt in your cell phones. It may not be deleted by the user as such. So the ringtones which you develop on your own, the user develops on his own, it can be deleted, modified at any point of time, and you can do any changes in the ringtones whichever you are developing on your own. Okay, so this gives the clear picture on how you cannot. I mean, you can read the file, but you cannot do any modification in the file which are coming as an inbuilt modules. So that's your application specific processors. And coming to the single purpose processor, as the name again it suggests, it is going to work only for one purpose. So that one purpose, whatever the program that is being written, will be kept in the data memory itself, and along with the data and the program, both will be residing in the data memory itself, and it will be executed repeatedly for any n number of times until it is being solved. So the single purpose name itself says that it is going to be only one purpose processor. So for this example is a DMA controller. A DMA controller, the DMA is direct memory access. As you know that direct memory access is, the concept of direct memory access is the access of memory which is attached with a particular microprocessor can be done by your I/O units without the intervention of the processor. So this is what we call it as a direct memory access. So the I/O devices can access the memory which is attached with the microprocessor without disturbing the microprocessor's operation. So this will be enabled with the help of the DMA controller. So this is the only action or only work that is being done by the DMA controller. So wherever you keep this DMA controller, it will work only as a DMA controller, and it is only for one purpose. Okay, so this is again the explanation for general purpose processor, then single purpose processor. So this single purpose processor can be called as a coprocessor or an accelerator. As we had seen in the previous slides for EV, we had seen the use of coprocessors. It will be working even as a hardware accelerator. So the use of single purpose processor and general purpose processor will be coming into picture along with the application specific processors which are required for the. So here the program memory will be, as I mentioned before, will be having a very limited access to the program memory, and some special function units also will be available in the application specific processors. something like a compromise between the general purpose and the single purpose processors. So you can see here one example. This is a digital camera IC where both your general purpose processor and the single purpose processor resides in it. That's why I said, see, there is no difference between these days. There is no differentiation between microprocessor and a microcontroller. Actually, the block which is available as a general purpose processor is a microcontroller, but it comes under the general purpose processor, and the DMA controller comes under the single purpose processor. So now, if you see here, so many number of sensors, controllers, then say so many number of for so many number of applications in a car, you might be requiring this. If the size of the controller is going to be very high, very say hefty, and is going to occupy more space, then only the controllers will travel in the car. You can't travel inside the car. So the size of the controller need to be reduced to a very small size, say for an ABS or for suspension control or a central locking or rain sensors, dashboard control, etc. For everything, we need a very, very small sensor. In addition to it, the controller also need to be very, very small. Okay. Right. So for this, surely the IC technology comes into. IC technology plays a very, very important role for miniaturizing all the electronic components. So right from the sensors till the controllers, the size of it need to be reduced considerably. So if you take this, I think you might have seen this in an advertisement for Intel, where few people will be searching for something and one person will take over his finger and show like this, and they'll say Intel inside. So the same thing happens here. So this is a microcontroller unit which is occupying a 0 PCB. So here we had seen say 8085 processor or 8051 controller, which is of finger size. But now at the fingertip, the microcontroller unit can be placed, and that is very, very less in size and consumes less power, and the versatility or the frequency of operation will be high for this particular microcontroller unit. Okay. So this is because of the advent change in the electronics, that to a shift from microelectronics towards the nano electronics. So in early 80s, it was around 2 micron technology, where the size of the devices were big, and slowly they started reducing the size of the devices, like 1.2 micron, 0.35, 0.18 micron, 0.13 micron, 90 nanometer, then 65 nanometer, which is not visible in the screen, but still 90, 65, and 45, 22, 10, 7. So you can see here the discrete ICs have gone even to a level, which is in research, to a level of 7 nanometer. But in analog ICs, it is being limited to 90 or 65 nanometer technology. So here, the ICs can be made, digital ICs can be made to a very, very small in size. And analog ICs, comparatively, it will be somewhat big in its circuit level, but still it is going to be less. Okay. So the power consumed by it, see, when I reduce the area occupied by the devices and the circuits to a low area, the same way the power consumed by the devices also is going to go low. So when it goes low, obviously the the amount of time which you are going to operate any circuit can be high with the same battery level, or even if you want to reduce the size of the battery, you can reduce it. But it is a bit difficult to reduce the size of the battery when compared to the circuits which are having a high rate of reduction in size compared to the battery. So coming to the ICs, there are 3 types of ICs available. To application-specific integrated circuits can be classified into 3 types: full custom ASIC, semi-custom, and programmable ASICs. And here, the full custom ASICs will be starting from the scratch and will try to implement it. It will go through all the fabrication steps, and the circuit need to be designed by the designer or a programmer, and the layout need to be drawn, and it will be fabricated in the foundry, and they'll try to test it. Okay. So this will take a very, very long time of, say, around, if we plan and start, it may take more than 10 weeks to complete. So the example here I have given is, if I want to fabricate a new microprocessor, that will be happening as a full custom. So when we go with semi-custom ASICs, here it will be having certain pre-characterized and pre-fabricated logic cells. Those pre-characterized and prefabricated logic cells will try to hold its own area, and few other applications or few other circuits which are going to be developed with the help of the transistors and the internet. So here the design turnaround time will be a bit less compared to the full custom ASIC, because we are using the pre-characterized and prefabricated logic cells, which are done by somebody else, and will be hiring that and using it in our circuit. The first time success will be more when compared with the full custom approach, because already time tested logic cells are used, so we'll be having the first time success in a higher rate compared to the full custom. And here the manufacturing time also will be less compared to the full custom ASICs, because of the same use of logic cells through IPR or something else. So coming to the programmable logic devices, generically the PLDs, that is programmable logic devices, will hold 3 sets of programmable logic devices, like programmable logic element, programmable array logic, programmable logic arrays. So these are used. In addition to it, we also have the field programmable gate arrays coming under the programmable. So here we won't be having any mask layers, or the physical design will not be available at all. And the design turnaround time will be very, very fast, because in few hours you can connect the FPGA, and whatever the program which you want to implement, you can implement it, and you can test it at any point of time. Within hours you can complete the work, and within that time you can test it also and find whether it is working properly or not. If it is not going to work properly, then you can rework on the programs, and you can change the programs and rework for any number of times until you reach the intended results. So why programmable logic? As I mentioned before, we will have a fast time to market. The design, whichever you are making, will be proprietary to yourself, and there won't be any physical design, or very minimal physical design that exists. And the power consumption will be low, because you will be using the very recent FPGAs. If that's the case, then the low power consumption can be ensured, and high reliability, because even if there is a mistake in your logic or algorithm, that can be reworked for any number of times. Okay. So no ASIC type risk, because when we go with full custom or semi-custom ASIC design, it is something like, say, if the IC is going to fail, there will be a condition like they'll depend more on the IC's commercial viability. If it is not going to fit commercially in the market, then they will even close the company and they might be going out of that particular business itself. So even that type of risk is available in the framing out of the assets. That happened for Intel once, I think, because it might be i3 or i5 when they introduced i3 or i5, core i3 or core i5, they had this problem that if it is not going to fit commercially in the market, they would have closed the entire business of ICs and they would have gone for something else. So that kind of risk is available in the full custom ASICs. But in programmable ASICs, you will be having a reprogrammable feature. So that kind of risk will not be available in the programmable ASICs. So FPGAs, popular PLDs, it can be programmed with the help of SRAM technologies. In particular, SRAM cell technology is used, and all the logic components will be prefabricated and pre-metallized layers. And these days, FPGAs, actually, whatever I have mentioned here is a very older one. These days, we have the FPGAs having processors or controllers inside it, and it will work very effectively for, say, the parallel processing. And they'll try to implement the embedded system with the help of the controller which is residing inside the FPGA individually, and along with the logical design which can be made in the other parts of the FPGA. So this is certain applications that can be developed with the help of MSP430, which was developed by Texas Instruments. And not only MSP430, even other controllers like say Atmega or Raspberry Pi, or even in the same TI we have different controllers like CC3200. These were used to develop the different applications which are used for utility metering, portable medical devices, then sensors and security, energy harvesting, etc. And you can make use of the low power performance and how far we can integrate or interface with analog and digital peripherals. These are the versatilities of any of the nowadays processors and controllers, where it is easy to use and the connectivity is also very good. So we have sophisticated communication technology on one side and robust electrical system on another side. So if you want to interface, you want an interface between the communication and the power systems, you might require the embedded systems or embedded controllers which will reside in between it and try to have an interface between the communication system and the power systems. So this is one example which I want to show. So this explains more, in fact. So we have two sensors, LDR and PIR sensors. LDR is a light dependent resistor, and PIR is a pyroelectric infrared sensors. And we have MSP430 and CC2500, which is a wireless communication module. So this is a picture which was taken from a book. But see, now these days they have integrated the CC2500 with MSP430, and they made so the controller and the wireless communication module will be in the same unit, which is called as CC3200, and that is being used these days, which holds both the modules integrated in it. So this is an example for a lighting control system, where during the daytime the LDR will be in use, and during the evenings or night time the PIR will come into picture, because I can say on the other way, during working time the LDR will come into picture. Based on the external lighting, the internal lights will be switched on or off, and PIR sensors will come into picture during the non-working time of the office. So, say out of office hours, only few people will be working. So the PIR sensor, pyroelectric infrared sensor, which is also called as sorry, which is also called as a human detector. This human detector will try to detect. See, this node is going to be available in different parts of the office. So this PIR sensor will identify the existence of the human, or the movement that is going to be shown by the human will be inferred, and only at those places the lights will be on. Okay. So the PIR sensor is going to play an important role during the out of office hours. So from now on, I'll be showing one or two case studies, whichever we have done somewhat in the early 2010 or 11, and which might be very much relevant to the electric vehicle. And after that, we'll look in what are the specific controllers that can be used to reduce the number of components in the electric vehicle. This is one FPGA-based control scheme for a single-stage grid-connected solar photovoltaic system. So this is a work that aims at, say, interacting the PV with the grid, okay, through a control unit. Okay. So, say we'll be taking up the two-stage converter to a single-stage converter here, and we also check for the harmonic distortion. Okay. After checking it, it will be fed to the. Just have a look. It's a two-stage converter, which can be made as a single-stage converter like this, and this is the grid-connected single-stage PV system. Just have a look at it 1 second. Yeah. So here, I won't be going into the operation of this circuit. The main aim of showing this slide is to ensure that we produce, say, the parallel processing of the FPGA can be ensured here. So we produce two sets of pulses, one with a high frequency and the other with the low frequency pulses, which are fed to the devices for its operation. So here we have SPW1, 2, and SSW1 and SSW2. Say we can see here SSW1 and SSW2 needs low frequency pulse, and SPW1 and 2 needs a high frequency pulse, which will be developed, which will be generated from the same FPGA, and it will be fed to those devices without any interruption. Okay. So the parallel processing can be ensured here, but different blocks. Say unique blocks will be available. Two blocks will be available in the FPGA, so that generation of pulses is always possible with different frequencies. So here, this is going to be the block diagram, and this is the control scheme which is very simple here because it may not, when I use FPGA for some electronics or a communication application, the number of modules that are getting involved and the algorithm which I am going to run for any of those applications will be very high, and even in some cases the FPGAs may not be compatible at all. But here for our electrical applications, or say using as a controller, the implementation might be very simple. We can make it very simple and implement it. And even the TSK 3000A 32-bit RISC processor, which resides inside the FPGA, will be used to generate the sine wave and triangular wave. So those will be fed to the hardware design which were made by the VHDL programs. So here you can see, as I mentioned before, the FPGA holds the processor, even a processor or a controller in it. Those processor or controller can be used along with the VHDL programs which are used for developing the. So you can see the switching pulses that were generated, both high and low frequencies, which are exactly complement to each other. Say the low frequency pulses SSW1 and 2 will be exactly complement to each other, and high frequency pulses will be again complement with each other. So the experimental setup. Has been published in IEEE conference, and so here the THD is very less, and power factor is also ensured. One other work on say state of health and state of charge of the battery estimation with the help of FPGAs. So here you can see the SOC estimation can be done for measuring the available amount of charge, and we want to improve the lifetime of battery and its reliability. SOC estimation is the must. So there are different methods for SOC estimation: the discrete gravity method, open circuit voltage method, and Coulomb count method, and say neural network based algorithms, etc. It goes like this. So here what we have made is we used EKF algorithm, extended Kelvin filter algorithm, for SOC estimation, and we also have a separate module for charging and discharging control. You can see here the FPGA, one single FPGA holds both the modules, that is charging and discharging control, and the SOC estimation using the extended Kelvin filter algorithm. And the display is also interfaced, thereby say that this is an interactive display, a touch screen. So through the touch screen, you can even fix the say how much say to what level the charging need to be done. Okay, so the desired level of charging, rate of charging can be fixed by fixing up what should be the current that is need to be fed to them. So this you can do it through the touch screen, and the interactive unit can also be made for the control action. You can see here the implemented hardware and the state of charge and the time is being plotted here. You can see the percentage of charge that exists at different instances of time. We have also taken care the aging and the say due to aging the battery characteristics might get changed. Even those were taken care for when we did this particular. This has been published in Indicon 2009, 18, I believe. So what are the requirements of a controller for electric vehicle applications? Till now it is going in something like it's not half duplex, one-way communication from my side. So I would like to hear from you, what would be the requirements of a controller for electric vehicle applications? So think about it. We'll try to discuss at a later point of time, or you can think and use it in your applications. So what are the requirements of a controller for electric vehicle applications? What would be the requirement? What would be the expectation of a person who wants to implement a controller for his electric vehicle? Just think about it. Especially if the same question is asked to me, I would be answering something like this. Obviously, the data handling capability, that is the amount of input that need to be fed to the controller, should be very high. So the analog to digital, if it is a digital controller, then in that case, the analog to digital controller, analog to digital converter should handle more number of signals. So it should have the capability of handling more number of signals from the sensors, and those signals need to be taken into the controller or a processor, and it needs to be processed. And the algorithm which I am going to implement inside the processor should also can also be made big, and the controller need to be chosen accordingly. So which might handle each and every input from the ADC. Those values will be handled, and the conditions will be satisfied one after another, and the signals will be moving out through a proper input-output lines. So I/O lines need to have more number of I/O lines, thereby the number of control control signals which need to be sent to different parts of EV can be enabled. So these are certain requirements for any controller which is going to be developed for the electric vehicle applications. Apart from that, the controller should also have the compatibility or capability of communicating with different protocols which are which are generic and common to. So when I started with the protocol, so the protocols have come here. So several protocols are currently being used together to control the specific tasks around the vehicles, and especially the control area can. The CAN protocol, I think. Do you have any questions? Name shows that it is. Okay. So today's vehicle typically includes multiple networks, each controlling a specific part of the vehicle. So there is a gateway that is required. This buffer that enables different networks to share information via a mutual protocol, and so this is very, very important. The gateway is very, very important for any interactive between the controllers or between the two units. If you want to have some interaction, then that will be enabled through that. And the controller area network can. This is the most prominent and the matured vehicle network protocol which is available, which was developed by Bosch in early 80s for automotive applications. Since its inception, it has gained a lot of support and is now used in many more fields other than the automobile, as you know. And say for operating the lifts or controlling machine tools, monitoring engine room activity in the ships, and much more, it is available. And CAN is, to know about CAN, CAN is an asynchronous protocol. So it has, it will connect different modules which have an independent clock, and the specific disadvantage, if you want to know about it, when it comes to multimedia distribution network within a vehicle or any time dependent system for that matter, one or more network nodes need to be synchronized together. But that is a bit difficult here as a disadvantage. So other networking technologies are domestic digital data bus, FlexRay, as I mentioned before, MOST, that is media-oriented system transport, and these are certain other networking technologies that are available. And TT-CAN is that is time-triggered extension to CAN. This is also used to synchronize the systems. And apart from that, we also have LIN, that is local interconnect networks. So car makers say they increasingly use LIN, which positions itself at lowest level in the automotive networking hierarchy. So they want, based on the level of application, they'll be going. So if it is a higher end, they'll go directly with the say FlexRay or MOST, and the lower level of interaction, they'll be using the LIN, that is local interconnect networks. So high-end vehicle, an example. So here they'll use CAN, LIN, and MOST networks together, and the CAN controls all real-time critical applications like engine management, ABS, and traction control. And LIN will be used as a sub-bus for CAN. So and it controls all non-safety critical tasks. Say something like car seats, sunroofs, rain sensors, door mirrors, etc. This will be controlled with the help of the LIN. And the optical fiber network MOST, which also acts as a sub-bus for CAN, will be chosen for high volume streaming to control automotive multimedia. So you can see here all the three network protocols are coming into picture, but it does a different, different operation, and it will be deployed for different applications. So CAN, LIN, and MOST. So all the networks within the vehicle will be having a main control system, and those will be controlled with the help of the main control system, which also acts as a gateway for all networks to share the data. So you can see here CAN, MOST, and LIN. All three are available here, and so you can see that I think okay. Participants are more worried about the feedback. Don't worry, they'll be giving you the link. Okay, so CAN, LIN, and MOST will come into picture in any of the higher end electric vehicles, and this is the electrical wiring diagram that will be available for any EV. You can have a look at it, which includes all your electrical blocks also. The reference model, ISO and OSI reference model, which involves with the data link and physical layer. These two are the main layers of your network, which are going to play an important role in the modeling of the system. nodes. So the CAN protocol uses data link layer and physical layer in the ISO-OSI model. So the rest of the layers are left to be implemented by the system. The CAN node distribution, you can see here, ND1, ND2, and ND3 and ND4 are available. So different nodes. If you take a car, so there are three to four different nodes are available along with the main control unit. So it is being connected to the main control unit to the particular network protocol. And ND1, the operation at different nodes is also shown here. You can see, for example, ND1, if I take, it will control all rear lighting loads like brake, park indicators, and reverse and number plate lights. Those things will be taken care by the ND1, and so on and so forth for the other nodes. The CAN node components is also shown here. Standard hybrid EV power and control architecture you can see here. So it might start from the battery to DC-DC conversion, then motor inverter, then generator inverter is there, and which are being controlled by different microcontroller units. See, now we are looking at the embedded controller. So the different microcontroller units are used. 3 to 4 microcontroller units are used individually for the converter, inverter, there is motor inverter and generator inverter separately. But when we go with a simplified hybrid EV power control architecture, you can make use of a single FPGA, the field programmable gate arrays, where the FPGA controller can be 1 in number, where from 1 you can give all the 3 PWM pulses which are required for maybe at a different pace, which is required for DC-DC conversion, motor inversion, inverter, and generator together. And apart from that, the benefits of FPGA in hybrid electric vehicle and electric vehicle applications would be the performance improvements, differentiation while lowering the cost, long product life, and functional safety. So these are certain benefits of using FPGAs in hybrid electric vehicle. So the tighter control loops and faster switching speed. Similarly, continuous algorithm improvements can be possible, and integration of functions into fewer components and longer product life cycle, which would be even greater than 15 years. So, in specific differentiation while lowering costs, if you see, the FPGAs enable faster switching frequencies. So the components, the electrical components which are used for the switching frequencies can be reduced in its size by 5x, but you can improve the switching frequencies again by 5x with the help of the FPGA. So when I increase the frequency, obviously you might be required to increase the size, but that can be overcome when you happen to use the. You'll see that as a block diagram. This block diagram I have shown you in the start. So you can see the communication protocols available here along with the FPGA application. So the blue one which are implemented in this block will be done using the FPGAs. So the current system would be something like this, where it might use 200 say microhenry and say certain levels of capacitors. But here, when we go the next generation, it might be using only one FPGA. Say again, in the controller side, if you see, it is using 3 microcontroller units, and here it is 1 FPGA. And 1/5 of the size of inductor and 1/5 of the size of the capacitor. I mean, you can reduce it from the actual system which is existing. Okay. And even the speed of the motor can be from a normal one to the high-speed motor. You can. So these are certain benefits which are achieved when you happen to use the controllers, embedded controllers. I mean, FPGAs as embedded controllers. Okay, so this is not a theoretical one, whichever I am showing, which is a time-tested one, which was even if you go to Intel website, you can see this information, and so it is a very clearly specified and time-tested one. The motor inverter control. What are the different aspects of say when we use FPGAs as a controller? So increased processing speed, flexible design of interfaces, ease of programming, ease of integration, then cost effectiveness because of reduction in number of components and also the size of the components. So here also I have shown here with the same set of current system and next generation system. I have even mentioned the values. And coming to the battery monitoring unit and cell monitoring, here we need to estimate the SOC, SOH calculation, and state of power estimation. All these need to be done. For this, again, we need a separate controller where when we use FPGAs here, the performance improvement, scalability, and system cost can also be reduced. Okay, so now let's play a game because we have around, I think we have good time to complete this also. I thought that's why I put at the end. If time is not there, then probably I'll stop with my lecture and complete the session. But still we have some time to go through it. Okay. Just follow the instructions which are I'm telling from now on, so that you can answer the questions and play the technical game. Can you see the screen? Hello? So Ravi, can you see the screen?
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yeah.
So you can type kahoot.it in your browser, and it will ask for the game pin. You can put this 8474445, so that will come your name. You can give your own name, or better a short form of your name. Don't give any number there. So somebody has given J. No problem. Even the initials is fine. So few of you can join. You can spend some time for answering the questions. Participants, can you hear me? Please join through this kahoot.it, which is shown here in the screen. You open a new browser and type www.kahoot.it. It will ask for a game pin and your name, any name which you want to display here. That will show you this. So you enter the game pin 8474445 and give any name, maybe your short name or initials, etc. And enter the. Once you enter, you can see your name in the screen which I have shared. Okay. So when I start this game here, you are supposed to see the question in the screen whichever I have shared. Okay. The question need to be seen, question and the options need to be seen in the screen which I have shared, and the answers need to be, you need to answer the question through the browser whichever you have opened through this kahoot.it. Don't close that. Only through that you can answer. Probably many of you would have done for your students with Kahoot, but if anyone has not done, then whatever the instruction I am telling might be useful for you. I request you to join. If you have any doubt in getting into this particular game, please unmute your mic and talk. Is there any problem in entering into the game? 3 plus 3 plus 2. 8 people have joined up to now. And so, yeah, it was 11. I'll wait till 15, 1-5 joins, and I'll start the game because it is getting late. We have 12 questions here, 2 questions. Anyway, 2 questions, you can take it as trial 1, and after that, whatever the questions that are posed will be taken as all clears. Anyway, through this Kahoot, it is all clear zone. But what I mean to say is the first 2 questions might be very easy, so you can take it as an trial run. Here, the question need to be answered correct. In addition to it, how far or how fast you are answering the question also matters for getting good marks. You might have used it, I think. I'm telling you the concept which you would have already incorporated in your lectures. Okay, so still it is not moving above than 11. Okay, then we'll go ahead. Okay. Let me start. This is embedded controllers for EV. I hope you could see the question. The number of pins in 8085 microprocessor chip is. The timer runs here. It is only 30 seconds as given. So you can see in the screen 5 have answered correctly. You can see who has answered fast. Okay, RUS. Ranjan, Mr. Ranjan, and Mr. Jagdish followed them. Second question is on 8-bit microprocessor, signifying that the processor has a so that's 8-bit data bus. The Sindhu has come to the top. The third question is gate pin is 84745. Let me copy and yeah, so here one have answered correctly. So which flag register will get affected during execution of data transfer instructions? There's nothing, none of the above. Let's see. Yeah. Purnan has come to the top. Let's see who is getting more scores. Upon execution of this instruction, the auxiliary carry flag will get affected. I have answered correctly. Good. US have gone to the top again. See the fifth question in power electronics. The normal way to turn on and turn off is. You might be feeling it very easy because you are not experts in power electronics. You can answer it very fast. The other questions also were easy only, but you might have studied in your UG course. So here this is break over voltage. 6 have answered correctly. That is a shift in the bottom portion, but RUS and Jagdish has retained their position. Expand SIM instruction. set interrupt mask. 6 people have given correct answer. There is a shift in the first and second, and swap between first and second position. Which of the following is not a characteristic of UJT? Seven have given correct answer. It's bilateral conduction. Oh my goodness. RUS have come. So you joined, but see, I think few people are sending, I joined. Are you, are you, see, the one thing is you have to see the question and the options in the screen, whichever I have shared, and audio is breaking. Akash Mohanan. Whether my audio is breaking?
No, sir, it's okay.
Yeah. Mr. Akash, you can check your network. They say it is correct. Perfect. Okay, anyway, let me talk a bit louder also. That's not an issue. So you have to see the questions and options in the screen, whichever I have shared, and you have to click the correct option in the browser, whichever you have opened, and logged in with the game pin. If somebody has doubt in that, let me clear it now again. So the 8th question. If a microprocessor uses a 5 megahertz oscillator, the duration of one T state is. So 5 have answered, it is 0.2 microsecond. T states. There's some small change. This scoreboard, and up by 3 places. Abhijit has climbed 3 places up. It's also shown. 9 of 12. What effect do petrol and diesel engines have on the environment? I have answered correctly. Help deplete natural resources and contribute to increasing carbon dioxide emissions. See, in other choices, the other one will be, see, help reduce global warming is wrong. And similarly, reduce CO2 emission is wrong in the other one. Okay, so this would be the type. Okay. MB, Purnan, others have lined up. Move to the 10th question. What is the other name for EV given in olden days? This I have shown in my lecture. 10 have answered correctly out of 14. 10 have answered correctly. It is zero tailpipe emission vehicle, which I shown in my lecture. Sindhu has climbed up. What is meant by the term regeneration? This is the last but one question. One more question. 11 have answered correctly. Sindhu has climbed the top. Last question. How can you identify a high voltage cable? How will you identify a high voltage cable? Please look at it and answer. Only one have answered correctly. It is orange color. Let's see who's taking up the third place. Second is RPS. First is Sindhu. Actually, here we also have one more. Probably you can take runners up is Arun and MB. You can also use for your, I don't know whether your classes have started with the students. If not, even if it has started, you can use this for conducting any tests or anything. Here we have some concept when I had my workshop with the NITTR Chennai, they were informing me that the person who scored high during the first question, okay, so the result of first question, if it holds the person who is having highest score, will not, most probably, the probability again, the probability or the theory says that he won't achieve first at the end. So that has been proven again here. Okay. Right. So congratulations to all who scored good, and for others it is, say, you can skip it up. Let me stop sharing this. 1 second, just be online. If you have any queries, you can you can ask me now, or you can post it.
Participants, if you have any queries, please post it on a chat box or directly you can interact with the resource person.
All right, if you have any queries also, you can send to my mail at later point of time. Okay. It's already time. So before I conclude, I think most of you might be teachers, so it tells about the true teacher, how he or she should be. The only true teacher is he who can immediately come down to the level of student and transfer his soul to the student's soul and see through and understand through his mind. Such a teacher can really teach millions. So this was told by Swami Vivekananda in India and Her Problems book, which inspired me to become a teacher. So that's why I show this at all my end of lectures. I'll be showing this verses. So that might inspire some students if they are available online. Thank you all for your patient listening, and I thank the management, administration, head of the department, Dr. Kumar, for giving me this opportunity, and I thank the organizers of this workshop also. Thank you all. Thank
you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciation brings out the excellent with us. So in this cheerful occasion, on behalf of management of KPR Institute of Engineering and Technology and organizing team, I express my sincere gratitude to our today's resource person, Dr. S. Murthy sir, Associate Professor, Department of EEE, NIT Tiruchi, who shared his wide research experience on embedded controller for EV technology, design aspects of controller with FPGA, FPGA-based system design, and shared his experience how to make a session interactive with Kahoot. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and providing your valuable time with us. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Professor Ravi.
Thank you so much, sir. So on behalf of organizing team, I thank all the participants who provide your valuable presence and make these sessions as an interactive manner. So thank you so much. The afternoon session will start by 2 p.m. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Professor Ravi, I'm leaving the meeting.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much.